Dr. Banks, he did his PhD in Leeds, UK, working on herpes simplex virus, and afterwards he did his postdoctoral fellowship at the Imperial Cancer Research Fund in London, where he worked on the tumor suppressor P53 and human papillomavirus. He started his own lab in the Ludwig Institute for Cancer Research, and after that he moved to Trieste in Italy to lead the tumor virology lab working on human papillomavirus and cervical cancer. He's been a world leader in human papillomavirus research for close to 30 years, with his main interest on cancer mechanisms and defining how viral oncoproteins drive tumor formation. Dr. Banks published close to 200 original articles in prestigious journals such as Nature, IMBO, Nature Cell Biology. He was elected Director General for ICGEB last year. He's responsible for the activities of 3 institutes of ICGEB in Trieste, New Delhi, and Cape Town of more than 700 scientists. He's also responsible for interactions with 66 member states. Jordan is one of them. Please welcome Dr. Lawrence Banks.
So, good morning, everybody. I'm absolutely overwhelmed by this welcome and the attendance. First of all, I have to say a really very, very big thank you to the University of Jordan for hosting us here today. From what this is my first time in Jordan, and from what I've seen, it looks like one of the most beautiful countries in the world. So I'm really looking forward to spending more time here. The campus you have is wonderful, and I'm really looking forward to the next few days to see how we can further collaboration and interactions between ICGEB and Jordan. And I think it's really a wonderful opportunity for promoting international collaboration. And of course, I have to say a massive thank you to Dr. Belal here, who has done an amazing job in putting this workshop together. And I think just the numbers of everybody who's here is really a testament to saying how successful this is going to be. So thank you again for that. Now, what I like to normally do, well, myself and Vittorio do with these workshops, we like to try and keep them as informal as possible. So, if when we go through the various aspects, if you have any questions or as we go through, please intervene. Don't necessarily wait until we get to the end of each section before entering into discussion. It's sometimes really good if there's interventions as we proceed. It maybe reminds me of something, it helps me explain something maybe in a little bit more detail. So don't be afraid to intervene at any point. And also, if I'm going too quickly or things are not clear, again, please wave a hand and I'll stop and hopefully be able to explain. So the program that we have is going to be, I'll give you a general introduction to the ICGEB. And really that's more to give you background, to give you some idea about the sorts of research activities that we perform in the different institutes, and then to highlight briefly each of the different programs which I think you might be able to benefit at different levels. And of course, ICGEB is working at multiple layers. So we have things that are very relevant for PhD students and undergraduates. We have activities that are very relevant for PIs, and we have activities that are relevant at an institutional level. And so I'll try and touch on all of those as I go through in this next sort of 45 minutes or so. And then Dr. Venturi will have 2 presentations. One of them will address the meetings and courses and the fellowship programs, and to explain what we're looking for in terms of applications for the fellowship program, how to go about organising a meeting if you wish ICGB support to help put a conference together. And then the second part of his presentation will look at the grant funding programme. And I know this is something which is probably dear to many people's hearts. Grant money is something that was, for a scientist, is our lifeblood, so it's quite important. And what he'll do is tell you really some of the key points to look for in terms of putting a grant application together. And we really do like those two sessions to be quite interactive. And to try and really, if you have specific questions about how to put a grant together, specific applications, then really do interact. It's very important. And then after that, we'll go into a little bit more hardcore science, and I'll tell you about some of the work that my lab has been doing, and Vittorio will then do the same with his. So that's sort of like the general layout. I think, as I say, we want it to be informal, and so please do interrupt me at any time. So, ICGB, we are an international organisation, and that means we're not owned by a single country. We're actually owned by all of our member states, and currently we have 66 of those, and of course Jordan is one of our most important members. We operate within the UN system, and we also have research institutes that are located in Trieste in Italy, and that happens to be the headquarters. We also have labs in New Delhi in India, and we have labs in Cape Town in South Africa. Just to give you an idea about the scale of the organisation, in Trieste we have around 200 scientists. In New Delhi it's around 400, and in Cape Town it's close to 100. So that's sort of the level of activity that we have within our own institutes. And we've been around for quite a while. We were established back in 1987 when we were part of UNIDO. And we became fully independent in 1995. So we're an independent international organisation, but very closely aligned to the UN system. And the mandate for ICGB, I think, is very straightforward. It's to provide a centre of excellence for research and training in molecular biology and biotechnology, specifically addressing the needs of our member countries, and that means Jordan. So, what we do, our activities, we listen to what our countries want, and this is one of the main reasons for me being here today, is to hear back from you what you would like from ICGB. And so, what we're aiming to do is to use science for global development, to really make the most of the opportunities that science can give for improving the lives of people in our populations. Jordan, of course, is very centrally placed here amongst many other ICGB member countries, and so I think Jordan is in a pole position to be a place for promoting international collaboration within this part of the world. We have 9 member states within the Middle East. Each country has an appointed governor, which in Jordan's case is Dr. Belal. And within ICGB, we are run by our governors. So our governors come to Trieste once a year. We have a large meeting, and they basically inform the management of the organisation what the direction should be for the coming years. And so Dr. Belal is somebody you should, if you have questions, problems, issues about ICGB, I'm always available, but so is Dr. Belal. And he's the one you should really contact if you have queries or questions about the different ICGB activities. And so we have 6 different activities which I think allow us to fulfill our mandate. And you can tell from this that we really do try to cover the whole 360-degree aspects of how to improve scientific activity and cooperation with our member countries. So we have, obviously there's the science that we do in the labs themselves. This leads into the provision of various forms of fellowships, which I'll tell you some more about in a few minutes, for both PhD students and postdocs. We're very active in organising meetings, courses and workshops within our member countries, as well as within our institutes. As I mentioned a few minutes ago, we're also a grant funding agency, and we'll have quite a bit of discussion about that later on today. And we're very active in the area of technology transfer to industry. And so what that means is really trying to assist in taking technologies from the bench to the market, ultimately to benefit the populations in all of our member states. And then finally, we offer a whole variety of different scientific services and advice, from regulatory issues to simply accessing various platforms within our laboratories. And I'll say something about that as well a little bit later on in this presentation. So one of the things that sets us apart from essentially all the other international agencies is that we actually have research. We do research in our own labs. So if you go to many UN fora, they're very good at organising meetings, they'll discuss, they'll bring people together in various platforms, which is really great. ICGEB provides one other element to that. We can do all of that, but we also provide the science as well. So we actually have our own experts in specific areas who are directly available and on hand to help with any issues you may have, whether it's a research issue or whether it's things related more towards international collaboration. And I think a very important point about the science that we have in the institutes in Trieste, Delhi and Cape Town is that we don't do it just by ourselves. We do it in collaboration with you. And one of the reasons I'm here today is to try and ensure that we get more scientists from Jordan taking part in our research activities. And, you know, you can look at the publications that we produce, and if you look at the authorships, you won't be able to see them from there, but if you look at our authorships, they're people from all over the world. And that's one of the wonderful things about ICGEB. We currently have scientists in Trieste from over 40 different countries. And so this really makes for a really wonderful international scientific environment. Just to say briefly a little bit about the type of activities that we do in the labs. What I've done here is I've grouped the different scientific activities, not based on institute, but based on global themes. And infectious disease is something which ICGEB is very prominent in. And we have very strong research teams in New Delhi who are particularly interested in areas related to TB and malaria. We have Frank Brumbacher in Cape Town, who is also a very, very strong immunologist with interest in parasite biology. Virology, again, very strong programs, particularly in flavivirus research within New Delhi and in Trieste. And my own research activity, I'm over here in the cancer sphere, but I could equally fit well under virology because I'm very interested in human papillomaviruses. Non-communicable diseases, these are something that is growing dramatically across the world with an aging population. And so ICGEB has very strong research programs in a variety of different areas. I would say the team that we have in Trieste are world leaders in cardiovascular research, and in particular looking at the development of novel therapies for treating cardiovascular infarction. We also have a strong group working on neurobiology, and particularly looking at ALS and the role of specific protein TDP43 in a variety of neurological disorders. And then we have a team that works on molecular genetics, and these are actually really much more translational. They're using adeno-associated vectors to deliver novel gene therapies, and indeed we have clinical trials on one such for one such disease, Crigler-Najjar syndrome, which is currently in phase 1 trials within Europe at the moment. And then, of course, we have sort of very close links between immunology and cancer. We have very strong teams working on the cancer microenvironment and the immunology that's associated with that, as well as basic cancer mechanisms, which is the sort of area that I'm interested in. Medical biotechnology is obviously something that's critical to an organisation. You only need to look at our name, ICGEB, International Centre for Genetic Engineering and Biotechnology. You know, biotechnology is something that we're very keen to promote and to ensure that it can actually get to the market. And so we have 3 groups, one working in Trieste, which is actually developing biosimilars. And Vittorio will have a presentation on that on more detail this afternoon. But basically the bottom line is that we develop technologies that can be transferred directly either to academic institutes or to industry for products that can be of value locally. Within New Delhi, we have a very strong program of vaccine and diagnostic development. Again, this is mostly related to HIV, hepatitis and dengue, but there are also other forms of diagnostics that are being developed, and I'll be happy to discuss that with you later if any of you are interested. India is our, what I would call our powerhouse for industrial biotechnology, and this group here are all being funded as part of a special program from the Indian Department of Biotechnology. And what that special program is funding is basically work towards the development of second and third generation biofuels and also in bioremediation. So again, if any of you are particularly interested in any of these elements in more detail, Dr. Venturi, who's here, is also an expert in this area and will be able to assist you with any questions. And then finally, of course, you know, food security. This is something that is a global issue, and this is something that ICGEB is very actively engaged in. We have very strong research teams in both Trieste and also in New Delhi, working on a variety of different aspects of improving crop growth, generating resistance to various forms of biotic and abiotic stress, and also Dr. Venturi is a world leader in biofertilizer research. So again, we cover quite a large area of different topics, and I'm sure that for some there must be things here that are of interest to some of you. So hopefully we can, through the day, we'll find areas where you may wish to specifically take part in the programs with some of these different research groups. Just to make one plug about the science, I think we do very good science. We publish in all the top journals. We have high numbers of citations from Trieste, and our group leaders are either editors or editorial board members on over 60 international journals. So scientifically, I think we're very visible. I think we do very good work, and so I think we do provide a good basis for what I'm going to talk about in the next few slides. Through the science, that is the key for what we can provide in terms of the education through long and short-term fellowships, whether it's for PhD students or for postdocs. Now, these, all of these can be, the long-term postdoc and PhD positions can be taken up in any ICGEB lab. We have one call per year for the PhD students, and this is obviously so they join the PhD program, which initiates in October. For our postdoctoral fellowships, we have 2 calls each year. And I should also emphasize that although we run our own PhD programs, we also collaborate quite a lot with other member countries in establishing joint PhD programs. And this is something that we've done with Argentina, we've done it with Brazil, we're doing it with China. So these are programs where students can come to us for a couple of years, do research, but be registered in the university back at home. And I'd love it if we could develop similar sorts of collaboration with the University of Jordan. This just gives you an idea of the scale in which we can work and the numbers of fellows that we can provide. You can see they come from all over the world. I think the numbers are quite good. It's over 300. But do you know there's one thing that's missing from this slide? I don't see anybody from Jordan. And so that's one of the things. Next time I come here, I want to see Jordan up there. We also provide fellowships for short-term mobility. And the idea here is that these can provide collaboration between member countries. It's not for you to come to us in Trieste, New Delhi or Cape Town, but it's if a student or a postdoc or a PI is working on a project and you think, well, you know, there's a group here in Brazil that are doing something very similar to what I'm doing, and we could really benefit from a collaboration. Come to ICGEB. We love to fund those sorts of exchanges, whether it's someone from here going to Brazil to do some work there or vice versa. And we will cover, and Vittorio will tell you more about the specifics of it, but you know, we're very keen to support those sorts of scientific exchange amongst our member states. And this is just to show you the sort of activities that we did in 2018. You know, the exchanges can be south-south, it can be north-south. We don't really care, so long as it's a clear benefit for the 2 labs that are concerned. So this program is something that I'm looking to expand and grow, so please do keep it in mind. We're very keen to help in the support of the organisation of meetings, courses and workshops. And this just shows you what we're doing this year. I have some flyers here which will show you what's available for next year. And these meetings and courses, they obviously can be held in our labs in Trieste, Delhi or Cape Town, but they could also be done here in Jordan or in any other member country. And you can see from the map, we do this all over the world. Well, I am pleased to be able to say that we do actually get participants from Jordan coming to some of our meetings. So, and what that means is that even if we're organising a meeting in China, in Uruguay, wherever, an ICGEB member state or somewhere in Europe, as a participant from a member state, you don't have to pay registration and you don't have to pay accommodation. And we can occasionally even help a little bit with travel. So, you know, for next year, especially for the students and postdocs, I'll be leaving some flyers. Have a look at the meetings that we're running next year and see if there's anything that may be of interest to you. The meetings are of extremely high quality. The other thing that is very important about all of this, you know, especially with a meeting or seminar, we have a very, very active seminar program in Trieste and Delhi and also in Cape Town, and we record those seminars. So that means for Trieste, for example, I think we have around 40 international seminar speakers a year. All of those are recorded. They're from world leaders in their respective fields. And those seminars are then available on our website. They're free to anybody. And the same is also true when we have a meeting or a course. A lot of the lectures are recorded and are available for students to access and download. And I think this is really a wonderful educational resource. And I do encourage you, you know, when you go, for those of you who are teaching, have a look at the website, see if there's things on there that may actually help you in your own teaching, and direct your students to some of the seminars that we have that are really from world leaders in the field. Now, we are also a grant funding agency, and I'm not going to say too much about this because Vittorio is going to go into it in much more detail later on this morning. We have one call a year, and this is in April, so you have plenty of time to plan for next year. The next call will be in April 2020. And the most important thing in putting a grant together is doing it carefully and not doing it in a rush, and have time to make sure you really plan it out properly. And Vittorio will tell you much more about it. But I just want to say two things to just whet your appetite. The grants are intended to be collaborative. Doesn't mean that you have to collaborate with ICGEB, but it's intended to promote collaboration with labs around the world, but a collaboration which will clearly help you in what you want to achieve. You know, it has to come from a member country, and one of the things that we've introduced over the last 2 to 3 years are early career return grants. And this is something we are really, really enthusiastic about. So if you know someone who is overseas, they're from Jordan, they've gone and they've spent 3 or 4 years doing really, really top-class science, and then they want to come back to Jordan to establish their own lab, this is where ICGEB can help. We're really keen to try and support those individuals. So please, if any of you know anyone or are in that position where you've just come back, or you know people who are thinking of coming back to Jordan, please get them to get in touch with us, and we can look to see how they can, you know, we would obviously encourage them to apply to our grant funding program and to try and take advantage of what we can offer. And the grants are actually quite appealing because we're pretty flexible in how you spend the money. It is very competitive. That's the one thing. And so it's important that when Vittorio gives his talk later on, you listen to the advice that he will give you about what we really look for. Because a lot of grants fail on some really fundamental basic issues. And with this number of applicants, we have to be really, it is a tough process, but it's not impossible. And again, we are funding 73 such projects around the world. And once again, there's a very big hole in this. I don't see anything from Jordan. So again, one of the reasons why we're here today is to see if we can gain some interest and some opportunities for you to be able to take part in this activity of the ICGEB. So technology transfer. Does anyone have any questions at this point? Is everything crystal clear?
Thank you very much. What is the nature of funding? Where did you get your
Where do we get our money from?
ICGEB?
So we have the bulk of the funding, around 60% of it comes from the Italian government. It comes from the Italian Ministry for Foreign Affairs. That funds our activities in Trieste, and it funds around 2/3 of all these programs that I'm telling you about. So the fellowships, the grant funding, and the meetings. All of that, 2/3 of that funding comes from the Italian government. Then we have funds from India, which support the Indian Institute, and funds from South Africa, which support the South African Institute. Then the member countries all contribute a small contribution. And, you know, for a country like Jordan, it's $5,000 a year. So it's very, very small. And that, all of those contributions, it all goes back into to supporting these programs that directly benefit the countries. So it doesn't support our science, it supports fellowship exchanges, it supports the grants, and it supports the meetings. And as I say, 2/3 of that comes from Italy, and the other third comes from the member state contributions. Okay. So, moving into the technology transfer. As I say, I'm not going to say too much about this. Vittorio will say more later. But basically, what we do is we develop biosimilars. And biosimilars are products that have gone off patent and which are essentially the same as what is being produced commercially by a big pharma. And we have a portfolio of these, some of which are listed here. And we develop the technologies to be able to produce these so they meet the standards of the European Pharmacopoeia. And then this is available for transfer, and we transfer these to, most often, small companies in our member states, who then go on to market them locally. And we don't take anything at that point. It's nothing. If there's an institute here in Jordan that wants any of these technologies, we transfer it, and then what you do with it afterwards is your business. We don't want any share in any profits. And I think Vittorio will say more about this later, but it basically involves people coming to our labs, we train them, and then when they go back home, they take all the strains, all the technology with them, and we help them develop the production process in their own plant. And I won't say anything more about this. We don't just do it with biosimilars, we also do it with plants. But again, this is Vittorio's area, and he'll tell you more about that later. And then we have a whole variety of different scientific services and advice that we can provide. And I'd like to just spend a few minutes going through these, because there's lots of different elements that you might be able to, you know, these are not big funding programs. They're not somebody coming and doing a 1-year fellowship, but they're activities where we can really help practically in some of the things that might be happening in your labs. Now, in terms of advice, biosafety is one of the things that we're very, very good at. And this is a project that we've had with the Bill and Melinda Gates in sub-Saharan Africa. And basically the bottom line here was helping these countries to develop regulation for implementing the safe use of GMOs in crops. So we are assisting in the development of regulation for the use of genetically modified organisms, particularly in agriculture. And this is something, as I'm sure all of you are aware, within Africa is a desperate problem. And it's the only way that Africa is going to be able to feed itself, is by using these new technologies. So we help countries to establish the regulatory framework for using GMOs. We're also very active in scientific diplomacy, particularly in areas of post-conflict. And this is a program that has just been supported by the Italian Ministry for Foreign Affairs, and it's to promote a direct collaboration between ICGB and Eritrea and Ethiopia in the Horn of Africa. So we're very open to sort of also bi- and trilateral forms of cooperation. Outreach is something we all have to do. I think getting to the lay public, educating them about science, telling them what science can do, that it's not something to be afraid of, and of course, getting the interest in the young kids so that they also want to go on and be scientists is something that we all really have to do and we all have to work at. And ICGB is really good at this. We have a whole variety of outreach activities. And it's something that, you know, if any of you are interested in this, I'd really be very happy to discuss it with you and look into how we can assist. We have lots of different tools that we can use for helping you with outreach to the lay public. And one of them is just shown on this next slide. This is ICGB took part in the South Africa National Science Week in July, and this was really fantastic. It was attended by thousands of kids from across the country, and what we were showing were these things, folding paper microscopes. I don't know if any of you has anyone heard of the Foldscope? Okay, I see some nods. Good, excellent. So these are brilliant. They're fantastic for teaching kids in schools. And they're actually, you know, the resolution that you get through these things is actually really quite impressive. And they cost $2. So they're really, really very, very good. We're also looking to build more concrete presence in many of our member states. And one of the ways in which we're doing that is through the establishment of regional research centres. And I have a whole presentation on this this afternoon, so I'm not going to say too much about it just now. But the bottom line is that, you know, we sense that despite all our fellowship programs and various activities that we have, some countries really wanted us to be more visible within their territories. And the way in which we're going about doing this is through the establishment of regional research centres. These are purely national bodies. They're not part of ICGB, but they're very much supported by us. And the idea is that these centres will perform research activities that are specifically relevant for the region, and will essentially follow a kind of ICGB model, in that they'll do science, they'll do education, they'll provide fellowships, there'll be a forum for holding meetings and courses, and also foster interaction with local biotech industries. We're doing this actively in 2 locations at the moment, in China and also in Panama. And the one in China is due to open at the China Medical City, which is just outside Shanghai, and we're expecting this to be operational within the next few months. And this will all be focused on biomedical research, as you can imagine, within this sort of biotech environment. One of the things that we're very lucky to have in the ICGB labs is really, really good infrastructure. Now, this is there to obviously facilitate the science that we do, but it's also there for you if you need it. I'm very keen that people can come from our member countries and access the various facilities that we have, whether it's in Trieste or Cape Town or in Delhi. And this is just to give you an idea of the sorts of platforms that we have available. We have very good proteomics facilities, flow cytometry. We have BL level 3 facilities for work with both animals and also in a regular BL3 setting. And then a variety of other platforms. For instance, microscopy. We have a very good microscopic platforms in both Delhi and Trieste, and they're available for people to come and use if there is an interest. Likewise with the proteomics. And we have a high throughput screening platform. So what that means, this is a platform, it's robotics, and we have access to various libraries, whether they're compound libraries, they're microRNAs, the siRNAs, for the whole human genome, for the mouse genome. These are all there in the labs. People can come from member countries to access those libraries and to do the screens. The only thing that we request for anyone who wants to use the high throughput platforms is that you've already established an assay. You need to have a good, robust assay before you can come and use these technologies. But if there's an assay in place, then we're delighted to host people to use these various forms of screens, whether it's for drug discovery, whether it's pathway identification, doesn't matter. And then we also have a very strong bioinformatics group in New Delhi. They're particularly interested in aspects related to translational research. But again, if you're interested or you need any assistance, we'd be more than happy to help in any way. And I should also stress that ICGEB in Trieste is also recruiting a new head of the bioinformatics group. So again, we're really beginning to invest more heavily in this particular area. And all of this is all supported through the fellowship program. So if somebody wants to come and access some of the facilities for 2 or 3 weeks or a couple of months, we'll pay for the travel, we'll pay for the fellowship, a stipend while you're there to cover accommodation and living costs. So again, please do consider making use of these different opportunities.